It was never supposed to happen like this. That night was meant to be quiet, reflective, almost ceremonial in its calm, just another controlled royal broadcast marking the end of a long year. But the moment Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, sat beneath those muted studio lights, something shifted. Years of restraint cracked open, and when she spoke, the silence that had protected the palace for nearly a decade finally snapped. Her voice didn't shake. That was the most unsettling part. It stayed calm, deliberate, almost surgical. And then she said it that she had never encountered anyone in the royal family who behaved as improperly as Meghan Markle. No hesitation, no softening. Just truth delivered clean and sharp. In that instant, everything changed. What had once been whispered behind palace doors, cautiously hinted at in memoirs and biographies, suddenly stood in full view. Sophie didn't rant, she didn't dramatize. She simply confirmed what insiders had danced around since 2018, that Meghan's conduct, especially toward Prince William, crossed lines that were never meant to be crossed. And once those words aired, the world erupted. Within minutes, the clips spread everywhere. Social media lit up like a fuse had been struck. Commentators replayed her sentence again and again, dissecting every pause, every word choice. This wasn't tabloid gossip anymore. This was the institution speaking, not through press releases or courtiers, but through one of its most disciplined voices. What stunned people most wasn't the accusation itself, but who it came from. Sophie isn't known for spectacle. She doesn't chase headlines. When she speaks, it's because silence has become impossible. And insiders say this moment had been building for years. Back in 2018, Sophie was one of the few royals who genuinely tried to help Meghan settle in. Private lunches, quiet guidance, gentle explanations of protocol that most newcomers take years to absorb. She even helped behind the scenes in the run-up to the wedding at St. George's Chapel. But those efforts, according to people who were there, were met not with gratitude, but with impatience. Meghan didn't want to adapt. She wanted the system to bend. And the first signs of discomfort appeared almost immediately. Late 2018, early 2019. Aides began noticing moments that felt off, gestures that lingered too long, touches that didn't belong, hugs where handshakes were expected, cheek kisses that left people stiff and unsure of how to respond, repeated physical familiarity directed toward Prince William that made staff deeply uncomfortable. Sophie made it clear this wasn't about cultural misunderstanding. It was about persistence. It happened again and again, even after discomfort was obvious, even after William himself reportedly shifted away, offering no reciprocal gestures at all. There was one moment that insiders still talk about, a garden party shortly after the wedding. While most new family members observed quietly, Meghan leaned straight into informality, greeting William with a cheek kiss and a casual touch on the arm. Witnesses said his body language changed instantly. The spark of unease was lit right there, and it didn't fade. By October 2018, at a palace event, Meghan was again seen placing her hand on William's back while speaking to him. In any other setting, that might seem harmless. Inside royal walls, touching the air like that is a clear boundary violation. William shifted away, polite, restrained, but unmistakably uncomfortable. What troubled Sophie most was that this behavior wasn't isolated. It extended to Catherine, to Sarah Ferguson, to Beatrice and Eugenie, even to Sophie herself. The gestures felt theatrical, she said, performative warmth rather than genuine connection. And that raised alarms. Because inside the monarchy, physical closeness isn't about warmth. It's about restraint, about respecting space, hierarchy, and the unspoken rules that hold everything together. By early 2020, months before Harry and Meghan officially stepped back, staff had already documented patterns that worried senior aides. Private conversations shared externally, frustration with hierarchy, insistence on equal billing with William and Catherine, burnout spreading fast among those tasked with managing her expectations. Then came the cracks within the so-called Fab Four. Sophie described how Meghan's behavior began to affect Catherine directly. Catherine, who values structure and preparation, found herself repeatedly blindsided. One incident during preparations for a joint appearance left Catherine in tears after a tense exchange. Meghan reported reportedly refused to follow agreed seating plans, pushing instead to position herself beside William. And then there was Archie's christening. The refusal to name godparents, the rejection of proposed photographers, traditions quietly discarded. Sophie said it wasn't about privacy, it was about control. Behind all of it, she saw something else forming. Harry being slowly isolated, doors closing behind him, distance growing between him and his brother, his grandmother, his anchors. What some dismissed as tabloid exaggeration suddenly felt painfully real. Then came the Oprah interview. For Sophie, that was the final break with discretion. Allegations aired globally, silence weaponized, the family blindsided. Sophie had reached out before, offered guidance, offered conversation. Meghan declined. "I have Harry," she reportedly said. "That's all I need." Sophie said that exchange stayed with her. From there, the floodgates opened. Netflix. Private footage made public. WhatsApp messages turned into content. And then Spare, a book Sophie didn't call a memoir, but a grenade. Family arguments broadcast, private pain monetized. A scuffle turned into a global scandal. Through it all, the palace stayed silent by design. Not weakness, strategy. But the damage was real. Polling shifted, trust eroded, charities suffered, and Sophie believes Meghan didn't just fail to adapt, she leveraged her alienation. The exit wasn't about peace, it was about leverage. By 2024, decisions replaced dialogue, security requests denied, titles left unresolved. Not because of background Sophie stressed, but because of intention. Loyalty mattered, and it was missing. The final fracture came in late 2025. A competing holiday special released just as Catherine's Christmas concert aired. Timing that felt familiar. Predictable. Oprah before Philip's funeral, Netflix before Earthshot, memoir leaks before the coronation. And now this. Public reaction was brutal. Catherine's concert soared. Meghan's special vanished from rankings. And when Meghan's team attempted to trademark a royal-themed phrase days later, backlash exploded. Sophie didn't sugarcoat it. You can't leave the family, call it toxic, and then bottle its magic for branding. And so the palace closed the door, quietly, finally, without spectacle. No lawsuits, no shouting, just silence, the kind that ends chapters. As 2025 closed, the message was unmistakable. The monarchy moved forward, Catherine rose steadily, William stepped into leadership, and Meghan and Harry remained Duke and Duchess in name only. No role, no influence, no return. Sophie's final words lingered long after the broadcast ended. "We are not performers," she said, "we are stewards." And in that single sentence, the entire story crystallized. Meghan saw royalty as a platform, the family saw it as responsibility. That difference defined everything, from the first awkward touch to the final irreversible silence. And once that silence settled in, it didn't lift. It thickened. Behind palace walls, people stopped asking if reconciliation was possible and started asking why it ever should be. The emotional exhaustion had reached a point where even mentioning Harry and Meghan's names triggered a visible tightening in the room. Not anger anymore, something colder, something final. Sophie made it clear that what hurt most wasn't criticism. The family had survived criticism for centuries. What shattered trust was exposure. Private moments turned into content. Family disagreements packaged as episodes. Pain transformed into product. And once that line was crossed, there was no walking it back. She spoke quietly about how each release chipped away at something sacred. A text message here, a photograph there, a clip that meant nothing to the public, but everything to the people who lived it. Inside the palace, privacy was never about secrecy, it was about dignity. And dignity, once sold, doesn't regenerate. By the time Harry pushed again for armed security, the reaction was no longer debate. It was disbelief. To reject duty but demand protection felt, in Sophie's words, not just tone-deaf but dangerous. The comparison she drew to past scandals wasn't accidental. It was a warning. The monarchy could not be seen bending its own rules for those who had publicly abandoned them. That stance hardened further as public sentiment shifted. Polls didn't just dip, they collapsed. Support evaporated. And while Harry seemed stunned by how quickly goodwill disappeared, Sophie wasn't surprised. She said, people can forgive many things, but they don't forgive being manipulated. The title's question lingered like an unresolved ache. Sophie addressed it carefully, knowing every word would be dissected. It was never about children, never about biology. It was about intention. Titles are symbols of trust, and trust just cannot coexist with constant public warfare against the very institution granting them. Then came the moment that finally removed all doubt: the holiday clash. As Catherine prepared for a national moment meant to unite, Meghan's competing project dropped with uncanny precision. Not coincidence, pattern. And this time, even the most patient aides had had enough. Christmas, a rare pause, a shared breath for the country, had been turned into another battlefield. The public responded instantly and brutally. Viewership numbers spoke louder than statements ever could. One broadcast soared, the other vanished. And when news broke that Meghan's team had attempted to trademark a phrase drenched in royal imagery, even long neutral observers recoiled. Sophie's exhaustion was visible then. Not rage, not bitterness, just fatigue. You cannot condemn the crown one day and monetize its aura the next. That contradiction had become impossible to ignore. From that point on, the palace didn't need to explain itself, it simply moved on. No invitations, no negotiations, no quiet meetings disguised as family healing. The door wasn't slammed, it was closed with calm certainty. And that, Sophie implied, was the most devastating response of all. As the year ended, the contrast became almost painful. Catherine's steady rise, William's growing authority, a monarchy quietly reaffirming its purpose through work, not words. And across the ocean, a brand struggling to find footing without the institution it once tried to outshine. Sophie didn't celebrate that outcome. She mourned what could have been. But she refused to rewrite history to soften it. Her final reflection cut deeper than any accusation. Meghan, she said, never understood that the crown isn't worn for applause. It's carried often silently for people you'll never meet, across generations you'll never see. And in that misunderstanding lay the entire tragedy. The story didn't end with punishment or spectacle, it ended with absence, with names no longer spoken, with silence so complete it echoed. As King Charles delivered his Christmas message, calm and resolute, there were no references, no acknowledgements, no olive branches extended through cameras. And that omission said everything. Because in the royal world, silence is not weakness, it is judgment. It is judgment. It is judgment.